In that late Cretaceous epoch, entirely torn asunder by razor-sharp teeth and ceaseless territorial warfare, every breath drawn upon the earth was saturated with tight, murderous intent and ferocious competition. Yet, deep within a secluded wetland shrouded by towering flying spider ferns and an impenetrable, heavy night mist, a most incredible and paradoxical anomaly was unfolding. A titan of astronomical proportions, armed with a pair of 2-meter arms bearing massive claws once deemed the most terrifying weapons of prehistory, had now completely abandoned its defensive posture. Tonight, by the gentle flicker of the hearth fire and through this narrative you need not burden your mind to remember, let us step together into the true life of the Deinocheirus that uses its great ears to listen to the whisper of the wind. Listen close, in the crisp, silent midnight air, there is no furious roar of predators, nor the thundering panic of fleeing prey, but only an exquisitely delicate sound. It is the gentle whisper of leaves brushing against one another as the evening breeze sweeps through the boundless reed beds, rustling softly like a pair of invisible hands caressing the earth. This is the Deinocheirus that listens to the wind with its great ears. In this primordial long night where even the stars seem about to slumber, it stands in absolute tranquility at the center of the damp mudflat. The moonlight pierces through the compounding layers of dense, heavy fog, cascading down in mottled beams of silver light that rest quietly upon its bizarrely shaped head, which is tilted slightly like that of a contemplating philosopher. This prehistoric giant, which spent its entire life practicing ultimate focus and listening, stands by its mere presence as the most enduring solace to this clamorous and cruel world. The critical fracture of destiny split open during a restless twilight driven by abnormal volcanic and geothermal surges, rendering the entire sky a glaring, dull ash gray. The air was saturated with dry volcanic soot and the bitter, scorched aroma exuded by ancient conifer forests, suffocatingly hot, as every living creature bolted frantically to seize and claim ground. On the edge of this narrow valley, baked and split open by the unforgiving sun, the Deinocheirus that listens to the wind with its great ears was confronting the most exhausted and bewildered moment of its existence. Its physical reserves had been thoroughly drained during a protracted, grueling conflict waged to defend this mire, and dull aches radiated intermittently through its massive joint complexes. All around it, the torrent of the Great Plains migration erupted, countless heavy steps stamping chaotically upon the ground, spreading a frantic aura of destruction and demise. Existing as the most bizarrely shaped dinosaur of its time, its early life seemed to be a constant stretch of passively enduring the misconceptions of its peers and the frantic, predatory trials launched by sheer greed. That mental spasm born from perpetual vigilance squeezed it deeply, causing a persistent, inescapable ache within the inner structures of its toothless, duck-billed head. It could not fathom why survival on this vast earth had to be synonymous with unending slaughter and confrontation, or why every single strike of its colossal claws, delivered with all its might, left behind nothing but emptiness. Yet, as it dragged its dozen-ton gargantuan frame, stiff from overexertion, into this low-lying, boundless reed marsh gently cradled by a quiet wetland, it finally ground to a halt. It chose to ignore the panicked herds rushing toward the dark ocean. Instead, it slowly lowered its elongated neck, and the frantic heat in its eyes began to dissolve, step by step, under the quiet caress of the murmuring stream. Absolute darkness arrived right on schedule, spreading like a heavy, protective sheet of black velvet, ruthlessly blanketing all the panic and chaotic trampling of the upper world. The Deinocheirus that listens to the wind with its great ears did not shiver in terror. Like other frightened microdinosaurs, instead, its inner being found a serene release within the immense quietude. As the midnight chill distilled through the woods, it navigated with slow, practically soundless miniature steps, pacing deliberately through the primeval marsh washed silver by the moonbeams. This vast expanse, so lethal by day, transformed under nightfall into its exclusive sanctuary. It threaded lightly through massive primitive flora, letting go of all defensive postures. In this graceful transit, its metabolic rhythm and its heart, which had been pounding frantically from conflict, began an incredible descent toward the most tranquil and tempered baseline. It no longer needed to scan for hostile warnings from aerial or terrestrial predators. Inside this hidden canyon where even the wind neared a standstill, the dense, tall reeds formed an invisible wall of safety. Just as it began to grow slightly warm from its wandering, its frame overtaken by waves of drowsiness, a visual and acoustic miracle unfolded at the center of a moist, soil-rimmed grass bed directly ahead. A crisp, cool evening breeze, quietly escaping from the upper skies of the distant ocean, pierced through compounding layers of obstacles, tracing a slow path deep within the dark reed bed. The wind was not as glaring as the daytime sun, nor as violent as the distant volcanic eruptions. It merely brushed against the reeds at a speed that felt near stationary, causing them to whisper in the dark. That auditory vibration was so pure, rustling softly, reflecting beautifully behind its closed eyelids like a pair of cool, gentle hands, instantly smoothing out all the tight tension remaining deep within its mind. Deeply enchanted by this ethereal and warm sound, the Deinocheirus that listens to the wind with its great ears trod upon the soft mudflat, unhurriedly anchoring its stance in the deepest recesses of the reed bed. Free from the oppression of dominant powers and untouched by the structural crises of its era, it experienced an absolute sense of autonomy and liberty in this midnight realm reserved exclusively for itself and microscopic audio perception. It raised its elongated, toothless head slowly, tilting its skull slightly toward the vector of the oncoming breeze, completely opening its sharp ears, formed by its unique cranial architecture, to the dark. It closed its eyes, withdrawing every shred of its sensory awareness away from the perilous ground, channeling all its focus into this pure world of sound undisturbed by any worldly warfare. At the gateway of its hearing, the night wind carried a soul-cleansing coolness, weaving through every single fissure among the reed leaves, murmuring a soft, gentle rustling. It was the oldest lullaby upon the earth, devoid of any aggression, bearing not a trace of copper blood, with only the primordial, icy sweetness of nature flowing through the dark. Within its inner being, it began to count at an extraordinarily slow pace, over and over, every ripple generated by the wind crossing the marsh, forcing its respiratory rhythm into perfect synchronization. This profoundly peaceful, non-threatening ritual of auditory focus not only coaxed the Titan itself into a long-lost state of deep drowsiness, but also pacified the surrounding miniature lives struggling for survival. A few small, primitive mammals, which had spent their day desperately scraping through the cracks of apex predators, blanketed in volcanic soot, now stepped out from the fissures of hardened bark, trembling as they extended their moist noses. Lifting their bright, crystalline eyes, they gazed with deep reverence upon this grand sentinel standing in the wind, sensing an absolute realm of safety emanating from its steady, non-threatening respiration. As the night dipped deeper, the brilliant primeval Milky Way galaxy transitioned directly above the immense marsh, as countless stars birthed billions of years ago burned and spun soundlessly in the deep vault of the sky. The long Cretaceous night seemed to dissolve into an eternal adagio movement, and the wind-listening Deinocheirus had now entered an utterly unguarded, profound state of dreamland. Within this deep slumber, those massive 2-meter front limbs, which bore the compounding scars of battle and excavation over the years, achieved absolute relaxation, hanging limply among the moist blades of grass. At the frontier of its dreams, the terrestrial volcanic silhouettes, the copper carnage of predation, and the structural pressures of the world vanished completely, leaving only a warm, boundless ocean of vibrant greenery. In its dreamscape, it was no longer subjected to isolation by its peers due to its bizarre anatomy. It grew as unchained as a nocturnal breeze, floating weightlessly and freely within the warm, ambient mists. Its elongated neck rose and fell with absolute metronomic regularity against the night sky, each exhalation of air condensed into a delicate, warm puff of white mist. Swept softly by the detailed textures of the wind, these vapors scattered and blanketed the sleeping forms of the small mammals huddled at its feet like a sheer, gossamer veil. The very progression of time grew blurred under its sentinel watch. The passage of hundreds of millions of years was nothing more than the stars performing an elegant turn across the heavens before this eternal monument of silence. It did not need to cultivate anxiety out of greed like the carnivores, nor did it have to worry about tomorrow's withering pastures. Its mere existence had achieved an ultimate reconciliation with all of creation. This exquisite quietude and restraint appeared thoroughly out of place within the cruel prehistoric world, yet it radiated an irresistible, sacred glow steeped in tragic destiny. It stood like a primeval sculpture anchoring the absolute edge of time, employing its respiration and hearing as chisels, carving the ultimate definition of peace line by line into the dark night of the wild barrens. Today, that Cretaceous epoch defined by the clashing of titans and the slash of territorial warfare has long since petrified into the black bedrock of the deepest geological strata through millions of years of continental shift. The Deinocheirus that listened to the wind with its great ears, alongside those primitive reed beds that accompanied it so tenderly at midnight, have together transitioned into silent, cold skeletons displayed in the recesses of quiet museum halls. Yet, the absolute, unshakable peace and auditory focus it discovered on that freezing, distant night seemed to pierce through heavy rock formations, echoing once again tonight. The night now is profoundly deep. The roaring traffic outside and the accumulated stress of the day have receded with the twilight, leaving only this sanctuary of quiet space reserved solely for you. Can you feel it? That subtle wind aura infused with a faint woodland scent, drifting all the way from the primeval marsh, is tracing the contours of your weary thoughts, smoothing out your tightly wound soul. In this world, you do not need to brandish heavy claws at every moment to prove anything, nor do you have to demonstrate your strength to anyone. You are fully permitted, like the giant Deinocheirus, to allow yourself to slow down at midnight. Let your mind align with the cadence of its extraordinarily slow breathing, listening to the rustling sounds of the reeds, beat by beat, mechanical yet utterly relaxing, feeling the drift of time. As you envision that ancient wetland closing softly in your mind and listen to that steady respiration echoing across hundreds of millions of years from the deep earth, your eyelids grow beautifully heavy, your frame weightless. The primordial night is gently carrying away all your fixations and fatigue. The warm dark behaves like a grand velvet blanket, holding you in a soft, peaceful embrace. Sleep now. The Deinocheirus has used the tranquility of its entire life to guard this safest of prehistoric harbors for you. Close your eyes with total peace, and drift into a sweet dreamland completely free of care.